Today I'm going to be showing you how I painted Dancing the Blues, which is an acrylic pour, a controlled pour, on a semi-abstract background. So I'm starting off here just putting some colour onto my board, and I've got an idea of what I want to do with the colours, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm just going to see how it goes. I've got a mixture of yellow ochres and I've got some red golds, and I've got, as those of you who know me, I've got some muck off the palette, which is just some colours I had in the corner. I'm putting this down with some vertical and some horizontal marks. I'm just trying to keep it fairly random, but I don't want to be all over the place at the moment. Also picking up some Naples yellow, which is a colour I love. And there's a bit of white going in there too. Picked up a bit of blue here, but I'm not sure. It's probably a bit too strong at this stage, for my background anyway. I'm just smudging it around with a cloth, just moving it around and pushing it in, so it's there but not quite so obvious. I'm not overly worried what happens here. It'll just develop. Now here I've got some acrylic inks and I'm just splattering them onto my background. I've allowed the background to dry off a bit first, and I've put these inks in, and I'm just going to rotate my board which is not behaving. I'm just popping these inks in, and I'm spraying it with water. It's just water, and just allowing it to run around. And a lot of this will disappear by the time I finish, but it's just building those layers into my background so it's a bit more interesting. Love it when you spray into inks, just watch how they move. It's fabulous. And I'm taking some newspaper, I'm just tearing it into some strips, and whilst that ink and paint is wet on my board, I'm just going to stick it in. So it's just adhering to the wet paint, and then I'm just going over it with some paint to seal it in. A few different colours going in. Now it comes to mixing the paint for the pour. I've put some different colours into these little different pots, and I'm pouring some, adding some pouring medium to it. And most of these are they're acrylic paints. This last one that I'm putting here is actually a powdered colour, so I'm going to add that to the pouring medium as well. So just a variety of different things that I'm using. But it's mostly just a mix of acrylic paint and pouring medium. And actually, the mixing up the paints can take quite a while. You can see this is quite thick, and I'm going to have to get it really smooth, and then I'm going to have to dilute it down a little bit. So I'm not going to show you the whole of the process of mixing the paints here, because then it can take a good half an hour or so just to mix the colours up and get them to the right consistency. So we're getting there now. We're beginning to get down to the consistency that I want, and it's nice and smooth. I'm just doing this for each of the different colours that I'm using. And I'm adding the water with a little pipette, and that controls how much I use, so I can put it in literally drop by drop when I'm getting near to the point of being the right consistency. So like I say, this process can take quite a while, so I'm going to shortcut it rather than show you the whole process of mixing the consistency. But you can see I'm getting there. I need it to run off my lolly stick but not be too runny, so it's just finding that right balance. Now here's my board that's dried now, and I have actually drawn my image out onto the board. What I'm putting into my paint here is just 1 drop of coconut oil, and this will help to separate the paint when I pour it. It gives me problems later on because putting the oil into the paint means that when I'm trying to paint over it later, some of it won't adhere, and it just comes off the painting. But I've put a drop of oil into each of my colours. And now I'm building them up in layers in my cup. And I've got a white here. This is just already pre-mixed, and I had some left over, so I've just put it into a pot. The white doesn't have any of the oil in it. It's just the colours that have the oil in it. Gradually just building these all up in layers. And I just want to make sure I've got enough in the cup to do the painting that I want to do. And that just comes with practice as to how much you need. Sometimes you need a full cup. I've done paintings where you need 3-4 cupfuls of paint, but this one I think will be fine with a smaller amount. Scraping the colour out, make sure I've got all of it. Love this green, it's a beautiful bright colour. Unfortunately it's you get to know with pouring, some colours float and some colours sink, and it doesn't rise to the top as much as I would like it to, but there will be hints of it in there. Okay, so bringing my image back in. Like I say, I have drawn the shape out that I want, and I'm now just going to very carefully pour into that shape. Just taking my time to go around and try not to go over the edges. And hopefully my dancer is beginning to emerge now. I love the way you get really vibrant, separated colours. You're never really sure what's going to happen, but it's going to be exciting. Now what I have here is just a little bamboo stick, and I'm going to use it to push the paint up to the edge of my drawing line, so it fills in all of the little gaps. So when I was pouring, I tried to leave a little space between where I was pouring and the edge, and that just allows me to use the stick to be a little bit more accurate. Just pulling that paint along to the edge. To give me this beautiful, elegant shape that I wanted. It's quite interesting because when you start doing something like this, you're never quite sure what patterns you're going to create, how the paint is going to interact with each other, which colours are going to come up and which colours are going to drop back a little bit. So it's a really exciting way to work. Just pulling it out to the edge there. Bit of a big white shape in the middle there, so I'm just spreading that around a little. And I can also use the stick to pop any little bubbles that I've got. I then needed to allow the figure to dry, and this actually took 48 hours to allow that to dry thoroughly. And then I'm coming back in to add some more detail, and this is where adding that coconut oil in can give you a bit of a problem, because it can mean the paint doesn't adhere so well on top of the oil, but you just have to persevere. You can wipe it down and clean it off with a mild detergent, but I just find if you use a thicker amount of paint, it kind of works. And I'm only trying to add a little bit of shading here, just to give a bit more shape to what I'm doing. Just putting a little bit of definition around the torso and the head. And it's a very elegant shape overall, so I've just got to be careful to make sure I don't make it inelegant by adding my shading. And I'm not going to add features, it's about giving an overall sense of the dancer rather than a portrait. I'm using a damp brush here just to move some of that shadow colour in where it was a little bit heavy. Moving down onto the skirt again, I just want to create the effect of some movement in her dress and some shading within the folds of the material. As you can see, there are places where it doesn't want to stick to the paint that's had that oil into it, but that's fine actually. That to me, that adds to it, where it sticks and then doesn't stick. I quite like it. Putting a shadow on one side of the shoe here. And then, as with many paintings, we just need to ground her, so we need to put some shadow underneath her. Just using a cloth to smudge those shadows around. That smudging around just means that I can take the paint away from where I don't want it to be. It softens it so it's not such a hard shadow. I'm just using a damp cloth at times just to wipe away where I don't want it to be, because my background is all fully dried off now. So I just decided I needed to increase the shadows in a few places. And I love the way that abstract background has gone. It's given me patches where there's colour, and that's with throwing those inks at it and the little bits of paper. I'm really pleased with how that's gone. And the final stage of this is to I decided to put a scarf or a ribbon, but instead of painting it in detail, I'm just going to use little pieces of a gold leaf, a gold foil. And I'm starting by putting down a dot of Bindex, glue, and then I'm putting the little patches of the gold on there. I'm using mostly gold, but I'm using a few bronze pieces as well. This takes a little bit of time to build up. And it's definitely something you don't want to do on a windy day if you're sitting near the window. These pieces are so delicate, they just float away. And the foils I'm using are the Pebeo foils. I'm putting the little dot of glue down, and then I've got a damp brush and I'm using that to pick up the little piece of foil. Just love the way they catch the light and the sparkle on these foils. They're beautiful. And I decided to add a band of this around her middle as well. Oh, dropped a piece. And there we have my Dancing the Blues with the acrylic pour on an abstract background with the gold foil on the top. I hope you've enjoyed this, and thank you for watching.